Welcome to War and Untold Stories. Here we explore the hidden side of history. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's turn back the clock to the early 1800s. Mexico, fresh from its independence from Spain in 1821, was a vast new nation, struggling to secure its borders. At the same time, the United States was a young, ambitious country with a powerful hunger for westward expansion. Land, power, and destiny were the words on everyone's lips. The flashpoint? Texas. After declaring its independence from Mexico in 1836, the Republic of Texas was a source of constant tension. When the United States officially annexed Texas in 1845, Mexico viewed it as a blatant act of aggression, a theft of its sovereign territory. The stage was set for a conflict that would forever alter the map of North America. The air was thick with tension, and the two young nations were on a collision course. Old maps from this era show a very different world, one where the lines were still being drawn, often in blood. The ideals of Mexican independence, celebrated in vibrant paintings, were about to be tested by the force of American expansionism. Iconic figures like Mexico's President Santa Anna and U.S. President James K. Polk were the key players in this high-stakes drama. The famous Last Stand at the Alamo years earlier had already created a deep-seated animosity, and with annexation, the simmering conflict was about to boil over into a full-scale war. President James K. Polk was a firm believer in a concept that would define the era: manifest destiny. This was the widely held belief that it was America's divine right and destiny to expand its dominion across the entire continent, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, from sea to shining sea. This ideology wasn't just a dream, it was a policy. To provoke a conflict, Polk sent U.S. troops into a disputed territory, a strip of land between the Nueces River, which Mexico claimed as the border, and the Rio Grande, which the U.S. now claimed. As expected, fighting broke out in April of 1846. Seizing the opportunity, Polk addressed Congress with a powerful declaration: "American blood has been shed on American soil." This was the justification he needed. Swayed by the patriotic fervor, Congress officially declared war on Mexico. Newspapers across the United States blared headlines of war, and thousands of young American soldiers began their long march south, ready to fight for their nation's destiny, stepping onto foreign soil for a war of conquest. With the war declared, the superior firepower and organization of the U.S. military quickly became apparent. In the early stages of the conflict, General Zachary Taylor led his forces to a series of decisive victories in northern Mexico. At the battles of Palo Alto and Resaca de la Palma, the American artillery proved devastating. Taylor's army then marched on and captured the strategic city of Monterrey after a grueling fight. But the boldest move was yet to come. In 1847, General Winfield Scott orchestrated a massive amphibious landing at the coastal city of Veracruz, the first of its kind in U.S. military history. Thousands of soldiers stormed ashore, laying siege to the city. After Veracruz fell, Scott began the daring 260-mile march inland, following the same path Hernán Cortés had taken centuries earlier. His ultimate target was the heart of the nation, Mexico City itself. Battle animations and maps from the era show the relentless U.S. advance, a two-pronged invasion that pushed the Mexican army to its breaking point. The path to the capital was paved with cannon fire and the grim realities of invasion. But what was life actually like for those caught in the conflict? For the common soldier on both sides, the war was a brutal ordeal. Disease, like yellow fever and dysentery, was a far deadlier enemy than enemy bullets, claiming thousands of lives in squalid, unsanitary camps. Hunger and exhaustion were constant companions on the long marches under a scorching sun. The war's impact on civilians was just as devastating. Homes were destroyed, cities were looted, and families were torn apart by the violence. Amid the chaos, however, there were incredible stories of bravery and conviction. Perhaps the most famous is the San Patricio Battalion. This was a group of several hundred immigrants, mostly Irish Catholics, who had deserted the U.S. Army. They chose to fight for Mexico, seeing a parallel between Mexico's struggle against American expansion and Ireland's struggle against British oppression. They fought fiercely for their adopted country, becoming legends in Mexico and traitors in the eyes of the U.S. The stories from this time, often found in soldiers' letters and diaries, paint a vivid picture of the human cost of war, a world of hardship, sacrifice, and complicated loyalties. By September 1847, General Winfield Scott's army was at the gates of Mexico City. The final decisive battles for the capital were about to begin. The main obstacle was Chapultepec Castle, a formidable fortress perched on a high hill that served as Mexico's military academy. The defense of the castle became one of the most heroic and tragic episodes of the war. Inside, the Mexican forces were bolstered by young military cadets, some as young as 13. They refused to retreat, fighting to the last breath to defend their nation's honor. These brave young men are remembered today in Mexico as Los Niños Héroes, the boy heroes. According to legend, the last surviving cadet, Juan Escutia, wrapped himself in the Mexican flag and leaped from the castle walls to prevent it from being captured by the enemy. Despite this incredible bravery, the American forces, with their superior numbers and artillery, overwhelmed the defenders. The U.S. flag was raised over the National Palace in the heart of Mexico City. The fighting was over. The capital had fallen, and with it, the hopes of the Mexican Republic. With Mexico City occupied, the fighting ceased, and negotiations for peace began. The result was the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed on February 2, 1848. The terms were devastating for Mexico. The nation was forced to cede nearly half of its territory to the United States. This immense tract of land, known as the Mexican Cession, included the present-day states of California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Colorado, Wyoming, Kansas, and Oklahoma. In exchange for this vast empire, over 500,000 square miles, the United States agreed to pay Mexico a mere $15 million and forgive its previous debts. For the United States, the war was a spectacular success. The dream of manifest destiny was now a reality. The country stretched from the Atlantic to the Pacific. But for Mexico, it was a national catastrophe, a painful dismemberment that left deep and lasting scars on the national psyche. The new border drawn by the treaty created a line that continues to shape politics, culture, and relations between the two nations to this very day. The Mexican-American War may have been relatively short, lasting less than 2 years, but its legacy is immense and continues to echo into the present. It was the final act in America's quest for a continental empire, but it came at a great cost. The acquisition of new territories reignited the furious and divisive debate over the expansion of slavery, a conflict that would ultimately tear the nation apart in the Civil War just over a decade later. Many of the military officers who would become famous generals in the Civil War, like Robert E. Lee, Ulysses S. Grant, and Stonewall Jackson, got their first taste of combat in Mexico. For Mexico, the war remains a source of national trauma, a stark reminder of a painful loss. For the United States, it was a triumph of ambition that raised uncomfortable questions about its identity as a republic. This conflict forever changed the map of North America, creating the United States we know today. It reminds us that every border has a story, a history written in ambition, struggle, and the profound sacrifices of those who came before. Thank you so much for joining us on this historical journey. If you found this story compelling, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. We'll see you in the next video.